Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Junior Year College Planning Information Session. My name is Alexis Kirschbaum, one of the assistant principals at Staten Island Technical High School. I want to apologize for the fact that we had to reschedule this event, but I am happy that we were able to get a new date and that we can give all this valuable information to you this evening. We are going to begin the night with a visit from our principal, Mr. Erlewine, and then Ms. Devine, our college counsel, will take over. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Kirschbaum, and I want to thank Ms. Devine for both of you coming together tonight to set up this very informative session for our junior families. I want to wish everyone a happy holidays. The seasons are upon us, and at this time of the year, as our seniors are at the end of the first part of the finish line, where they're finishing the submission of their college applications. Some students on a variety of different schedules are going to be finding out the results of some of the early decision results in the next few days. Tomorrow, in fact, I believe is one of the big target dates. So it's a really exciting and it could be a very overwhelming time of the year because there's a lot of things happening at the same time. But the great part about what Staten Island Tech always offers is these particular sessions that are intended to guide you along the way for this process has always been something that we've been thoughtful about in terms of when we offer this type of information and these meetings. So as our seniors are on the verge of the completion of that process, we begin ramping up the same process once again for our junior year families and students. So I thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. And of course, as has been true for all of these sessions that we've conducted, this is being recorded and broadcast live. And at the conclusion of this broadcast, it will be accessible for any families who might have not been able to join us tonight. And for those of you who wish to watch it again and just to revisit and rehear some of the messaging around what's ahead for you for the rest of this junior year and what's coming up for the next senior year. And I do want to finish off by saying thank you for what has been a really epic return back to Staten Island Tech in the building, seeing all of our students once again alongside our faculty members and the parents who have been stopping by little for various reasons throughout the past 4 months. It's been an absolute pure joy. The school environment has been really positive, and just the energy is pretty amazing. So I'm really excited and proud about the past 4 months. We're going into our 4th month of the school year. It's been action-packed, but very festive, very positive feeling vibe. And we're just all excited and geared up for what's ahead. And we're excited for you, our juniors, who really endured quite a bit these past 19 months. Worry not. We're going to take this one step at a time. You're in the best of hands and the most skilled of hands. And it's really just a pleasure to turn things over now to Ms. Kirschbaum and your college guidance counselor, Ms. Devine. So thank you all for tuning in tonight. And thank you, Ms. Devine and Ms. Kirschbaum, for making this possible tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm up. Welcome. I'm so happy to be here tonight to start you off on this journey that you're going to have this coming year. And I just want to remind you that the more that you prepare now, this year, the smoother senior year will go. So let's begin. Ms. Kirschbaum, can you move me to the next slide? Okay, so this can be a very, overwhelming, intimidating, stressful, all these negative emotions that come into play when you think about it. But it doesn't have to be that way. With a little planning, it can really be an enjoyable time. It's an opportunity for parents and students to come together and really dig in and look at all the possibilities that are before you. So yes, it is all these things, but it doesn't have to be only that. So please keep your mind open as we move along. Okay, so very, very important to always breathe properly. One thing I've noticed about students as they start getting stressed is they kind of hyperventilate, and then it just exacerbates all the feelings. So just try to really focus on breathing, in and out peacefully. Use the time this school year and in the summertime to really do your research, because there's 4,000 schools in this country. And then if you're going out of country, there's more. So it's really important that you do this a little bit at a time. Every college has their own specifics as far as the process, and you'll see that as you go along. The more research you do now, the better it's going to be. And by September, we are hoping that you'll have a solid list of schools. Some will be safeties, some will be targets, and some will be reaches. And try to keep that equal numbers so that you have kind of cast your net wide, and you're not, lopsided with too many reaches and not enough safeties and targets. Okay. So the application process is not just about your GPA, although that is, one part of it. But it also, I don't know if it's going to be for you guys, that they're still going to have optional SATs and ACTs. But as it stands for this college year, 2022, they are still optional. So some colleges have already announced that they're going to continue that at least through 2023. And, we'll have to see how that goes. So that may or may not be a part of things as well. The activities that you do outside of the school day, really important. Make sure that you have already been involved in things that you enjoy, and you continue doing it even as you get busy. Still keep yourself involved in those activities, because consistency is really important for the application process. They want to see that you have done things over time, not just for a short period. So of course you're going to have your essays and your supplements and your recommendations from your teachers. So it's a full process here, many facets. Okay. All right. So it's really important to think about college as what's the best fit for you. So what might be the best fit for, your friends or your siblings or your parents may not particularly be the right fit for you. So you have to really take a look at yourself, at, who you are holistically, and make sure that the college that you're considering really is a fit for you. Of course, you want to make sure that they're fully accredited. There's lots of for-profits out there. It can get confusing. So just be mindful as you're doing your research that you are looking at schools that are only, fully accredited, and the kinds of degrees that they offer. If it's strictly bachelor's, or they have master's, PhD programs, dual, BAMD type programs, things like that. There's a lot of considerations. You also need to think about whether or not you want to be in a city setting. You prefer, a more typical, urban, suburban type of setting where it's a sprawling kind of a campus. If you want a large school, a mid-sized school, a small school, there's so many things to consider. Whether it's a public, a private, if they have a religious affiliation, the kind of activities that they offer on the campus outside of the classes, if they have Greek life, if they have sports, all those kind of things. And make sure that your GPA matches and your test scores match, if you need to use them, what the average scores are for the students that they accept. And all that information is on their website. So you can compare yourself and see, academically, if it's the right fit for you. Okay, next. All right, so we're continuing with this. So the other thing to consider is, it's an expensive proposition to go to college. And it's beyond just the tuition. If you're going to be, living on campus, it's room and board. it's books, it's fees, it's the full cost of attending, even traveling, depending on how far you are, you might have to consider that as well. So it's not just, what you see on their, when they talk about the tuition and the room and board, it's these other things as well, which really can add up. There's types of, you have to figure out what kind of financial aid they offer. Is it need-based? Is it need-blind? Is it merit? Some of the schools will require, if you want a merit-based scholarship, that you have to apply specifically for that. Others, will consider students automatically for merit-based. So again, you have to check each college that you're interested in and see what they have to offer. So you want to look at, the credentialing of the faculty, also the student faculty ratio. The smaller, the better. It's kind of the rule of thumb. You want to look at the campus facilities and graduation. And I'm sorry, this is very. So the retention rates are really important to consider when you're looking at a college. The largest class is always the freshman class because people are excited and they all go off. But what you need to look at is, do those students stay and do they graduate within 4 years? So that kind of information is really important. It tells, about the satisfaction of the students who are already there. And whether or not, again, you're going to consider whether or not this is going to be a fit for you. If lots of people are leaving, maybe you have to kind of look at that. And then, of course, the NCAA Divisions 1, 2, and 3, if you're considering going that route with sports. Okay, next. All right, so this is where we're at a little bit of a challenge because, we're still in the throes of this pandemic, even though some things have gotten better. This whole idea of the large college fairs are not happening right now. So many of the colleges, as I've spoken to the reps that came in to speak with our seniors, they said that they're more and more doing, they're opening up their campuses. You have to make appointments, of course, to come, and they're doing tours and open houses and things like that. They also have all of that virtual. So if you check now, you'll see what's coming up for the spring, all kinds of opportunities to take a look at the campus. And some of the colleges also have like blog sites where current students check in and they talk about their experience as a student on that campus. So it's a little more challenging if you can't get to the campus, but there are more and more ways that you can get the information, even if you can't go. So again, you're going to have to check. I try to post things as they come to me that may be of interest, and I'll continue to do that as the term goes on. Okay, so this is where it gets a little dicey. So the types of ways to apply. So you can do regular decision, which is my personal favorite because it gives me more time to process all the applications that come my way. But there's also early decision, early action, restrictive early action. And before I get too much further, I'm going to just clarify those for you. So regular decision is self-explanatory. You're just applying with the general pool of applicants, and there is no early deadlines for that. So the early actions and the early decisions are where it has that November 1st deadline for the applications to be submitted. However, for the college office, we always have a full month ahead of time because there's a lot of processing going on our end. So we need time to do that. This year we had 230 earlies out of 330 students. So that's a lot of applications to process. So please keep that in mind. An early decision is something that is most important to consider. Early action is not a binding agreement. It's simply an early application where you're letting the college know that you're very interested and you think you're a great candidate, but you're not 100% committed. Early decision says, I am saying yes to you with the submission of my application. And I'm going to sign a binding agreement, and my parents are going to sign it, and Ms. Devine is going to sign it. And we're all going to say that no matter what, I'm going to that school. And you get to do that with one school. So I want you to keep that in mind, that it is a serious binding agreement. It's not, well, if they don't give me any money, then I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I can't go. That you can do with early action, but early decision is a binding agreement. So please, that's something that you really have to have a lengthy conversation about, because you're not going to know what they're offering you until after the fact. You've already said yes from the beginning. So keep that in mind. So restrictive early action. The only school I could think of right off the top of my head that has that, that many of our students have applied to this way, is Yale. I'm sure that there are other schools as well. And that is not binding, but they do ask that you don't apply early to any other private school. So you can apply early to state schools, but not private schools. So it's a little restrictive in that way. And the early decision 2 is also a binding agreement, but it doesn't have the November 1st deadline. It's generally somewhere around January that is due. So that's another option, but it's also binding. So similar to the early decision, you're agreeing, everyone's agreeing and signing that, yes, if you accept me, I'm going to go. So it's really important conversations to have. Okay, next. Okay, so there are, different types of application forms. So the most common that we have that, we utilize and most schools utilize is the Common App. So there's upwards of 900 schools that participate in the Common App. And, it puts everything in one place. So it's easier for you. You don't have to apply directly to all these colleges that you're interested in. However, not everybody is on the Common App. As you can see, there's 4,000 schools, 900 of them are on the Common App. So there's also school specific. And those are colleges such as Rutgers and University of California and MIT, that they have their own application. And so all the teacher recommendations and school information goes through their application process. So that's something that you need to know so that you apply in the correct manner. So let me see what else is on there. So it's also the coalition, which doesn't have as many schools that are involved with the coalition. And it seems, for our students, it's an overflow, since the Common App only allows for 20. I'm not suggesting that you apply to more than 20 schools, but sometimes people do. And so they use the coalition as another option to get those other applications in. And it's the same kind of similar thing, although the process is different than what we're used to with the Common App. But it's the same thing, where you gather all your information in one place and then you send it off to whatever colleges you want it to go to. And the other is the, maybe it's on my next slide. Oh, the universal application, which is absolutely on the next slide. So we can go to that. Okay. So again, it's just more information on the coalition. And then the information I gave you already about MIT, Georgetown, even CUNY. CUNY has its own application. They toyed with going on the Common App, but they're back to, their separate applications. So students will have to, if they're applying to CUNY, they have to apply directly. And then we'll move on to the next one, and I'll just speak briefly about the universal. Okay, so there's very few colleges on the universal, and it's the same process, that these particular schools, are saying that if you apply in this manner, that you'll be able to submit all your information through them, through the universal. So it tends to be, the Ivies that are on there, and some very, academically demanding schools. Not very many. I mean, there's only 44, and they also potentially will also be on the Common App. And there's no benefit, special privilege or anything given to going through the universal as opposed to the Common App if they are on both. Okay, next. All right. So financial aid, because now you've picked out your schools and realize how much it's going to cost, and you have to consider, how will we pay for this? So everyone fills out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And it is, now October 1st is when it opens up. It used to be in January. So that's a new thing. And it's, well, it's not that new. It's from 2016, but still it's a little bit of a change. And you use your previous tax returns to fill out the form, and it's free. So when you go on, you have to make sure that you're on the proper website, because there are, websites that are set up that look like this, but they are not, and then they're charging a fee. So you have to be really mindful that you're going on the www.fafsa.gov. And it, although it's a bit of a challenge the first time that you do it, you'll be doing it every year that you're in school, and it saves your information, and you just kind of update things. So it's really not so terrible. If you're going to a private school, some of them will be asking for the CSS profile. It's more in-depth information about your finances than the FAFSA. So you'll have to, again, look at the college that you're applying to and see whether or not they're requiring that. And then at the end of the FAFSA, if you're in New York, they're going to ask you if you want to also apply for TAP. So we suggest that you do so, even if you think for sure you're not going to go to school in New York. Do it anyway, because things happen, you never know. And if you have it in place, it just makes things simpler. And if you don't go in New York, it doesn't matter. All right. So those are the things, and we'll be talking about that more as you get closer to being seniors. All right. Next. Are we taking questions along the way? Because I'm just talking and talking here.
Presently, there are no questions on the comment slide, but please feel free to post questions should you have any, and then we will, when we're done with the presentation, Ms. Devine will address them.
Okay, I just didn't want to get too far along if people had questions. All right, so when it comes to junior year, which now you're in it, right? This is the time, and I've said it several times already, that you're going to start researching the colleges and considering whether or not you are looking for a special program, because all those things require that you are doing, applying for certain classes now. You want to make sure that you are on point with whatever it is that they're expecting you to have accomplished when you're in high school. So I always suggest to students when I talk to them that, everyone is on the computer all the time, so it's not like we're a stranger to this. Just dedicate, an hour here and there every week to looking through colleges. Just randomly, look through what you think you're interested in and start getting into the habit of just reviewing what's required, so that it'll become easier for you to discern what it is that they're asking for, where you fit in the scheme of things, and start getting that list going. Because waiting till senior year to start your list is not a great plan. And if you talk to some of your senior friends who chose that option, they'll definitely support what I'm saying, that they are very stressed because they're trying to do their work and all this stuff. So this is where the idea of planning ahead of time is just crucial. So if you don't know what colleges particularly that you're interested in, then I would suggest you think about those other options, like if you want to stay on the East Coast, if you want to go out to California, if you think that Hawaii is the place for you, whatever it is, start looking around and narrowing it down, because you have to have some narrowing of your options so that you can make a good decision. So as you are coming up with your list, you're going to look for things such as what their requirements are for testing wise. Some of the seniors now have come in and asked me, they don't require the SAT, but do you think I should send it anyway? So what I say to that is, if your SAT scores are in the high range for what the college, like they give you, this is the lowest score that we accepted, this is the highest score we accepted. If your scores are in the high range, then go for it. But if not, and it's optional, then don't do it. And please hold off on taking your first, well, I hope you haven't already taken your first SAT, but if you haven't, great, because we're hoping that you do that in the spring of junior year. Right now, you should just be doing your best to do your best academically in the classes that you have and not be prepping for a test. So, but you want to, back to the game plan, you're going to be looking at what they're requiring, if they're still going to be optional for your year or if they're not. And what are some of the special programs, even though the college itself might be optional, test optional, for the special program, they are not. So you need to know that information so you can plan accordingly. And also consider if you're going to apply early decision, restrictive early action, or regular decision. So there is definitely benefit to applying early if you're a good candidate, because you're put into a pool of students from around the country, not just Staten Island Tech students, who believe that they meet all the academic requirements of a particular college. And they are very interested. And if they're already decided, then it would be an early decision. If they're very interested, as I said earlier, but you're not 100% decided, then it would be an early action. So you need to start thinking about that. And again, the restrictive early action, if that's something that you want to consider. And even though they're accepting, say they accept 40% in their early pool, or even 50, they still have 50% that they have to accept regular. So it's not as if you're it's off the table for you if you don't apply early. And so in some cases, you would be a better candidate to apply regular decision than early. And only you can really determine that by looking at your grades and your activities and your overall picture of who you are and what your plans are. Okay. So if you're gonna be doing early, then make sure that if they require testing, that you schedule accordingly. And again, everything is electronic. So even if you're applying early, you could take your SAT either in August. They have a new, an August SAT. They have in October. Either one of those would get those scores to the school in time for an early decision. So there's no reason to be, panicking and trying to take them early. I've had some sophomores ask me if they could start taking them, and it's not suggested because there's a lot of learning that goes on organically being a high school student. So yes, I know that people prep, even though it's an aptitude test and you're not supposed to prep. Many people prep. But just by virtue of the fact that you're in a school of our caliber, you are learning, you're maturing, all those skills that you need to be ready for a test such as the SAT, you are acquiring by being a student in our school. So it's part of the preparation. And there's a huge leap in maturity and understanding from sophomore year to the spring of junior year. So it's definitely worthwhile to put the pause on and to just wait and take it later on. You don't want to take it too much because then it just looks like you're trying to get a good score. And if you just pace them out, you'll do fine. You'll do fine. Okay. And of course, maintaining your academic excellence. So the last transcripts that colleges will see as they make their decisions about you is going to be junior year. However, they ask to see them again in senior year twice. They will be asking to see them in February, and they will be asking to see them again after you've been accepted in June. And they reserve the right at any point to change their mind if you are no longer the student that they thought you were. So if you, do great junior year and you have this fabulous GPA and everything's wonderful, and then senior year you get accepted early somewhere and you're like, oh, I'm done. You're not. And it's really important to remember that you are not done. You're not done until June 30th when we send out that final transcript. So it can affect your acceptance to a school. It can affect your scholarship if you were offered anything. It could affect whether or not you're on probation to begin with. It's a very serious thing. So this maintaining the academic excellence is not only for junior year, but it's all the way through until you graduate. So please, please, please keep that in mind. All right, we can move to the next. I feel like we're going through this quick. Okay, so the research for the colleges and the special programs, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to tell you it's not. And students often will ask me, well, what do most colleges ask for? And there's no answer to that because it's not like being in a public school system where we're all required to do certain things. No, every college is independent. And so they decide what it is that they expect. So you really, really have to do the research. There's just no way around it. And the amounts of special programs is also very vast. So researching is an important aspect of this whole search. And now's the time. You have coming up on your winter break. So make sure that you take a little bit of that time and do some research. Start putting together some vague idea of how you're going to approach this college search for the rest of your junior year, and then finish up in your summer. Okay, so you're going to start making a list of colleges that you're serious about during the course of junior year. You're going to know their requirements, whether or not, however you're going to apply. Okay, so I feel like I'm on the same slide. Can we move to the next slide? Not that it's unimportant to repeat that many times. Okay, so now we're at the, okay, I'm sorry. I'm on my own slide and I jumped ahead. So you can go back. All right. So in junior year is when the eligibility for College Board scholarships come into play. So that's based on your PSAT scores. And, so just something to keep in mind that is, this year we had 31 actually semifinalists for the College Board. scholarships, and we'll see how that goes in the finalists and the winners. So that happens. That'll be happening now, as your results come through. It's important that you have some kind of summer activity in place no later than the spring. So, it cannot and should not, and please be sure it is not SAT prep. It's nothing. You can't talk about that in your college interview. You can't put that on your resume, and it's not what they're expecting to see. So whether it's an internship or a college program, that all the colleges have these high school programs that they run. If you're going to get a job, whatever it is that you're going to do with the summer, get a plan in place for by September, spring. All right. So starting in January, I'll be meeting with all the juniors individually and talking about all this stuff and sitting down with you and just reiterating pretty much everything I'm saying right now, so that you understand what it is that you should be doing. So part of this process is to put a resume together. So a resume, it's not like it's different than a work resume because you want it to be geared toward, they know what your academics are because all the colleges are going to be receiving your transcript. So that's not going to be on your resume, which typically, might be for work. What will appear is any awards that you have received, any honors that you have been given, any internships you've done, any jobs that you've had, any volunteering you've done, whatever you have done, clubs that you belong to, all of that goes onto your resume. And it starts to create a picture of who you are outside of the academics, because you're all academically capable. But they need more than that, because when you look across the country, which is where the competition is, it's not, students often feel like they're competing with their peers in the school, which may or may not be true, but there's a larger pool of applicants for colleges that is part of the competition, and they're doing, similar and things to you and more. So you have that resume, you put it together. And down the road, as you're getting ready to write your supplements and your Common App essay and all that, you'll have in one place everything that you've done, and it will inform what you write about. It'll show clearly the things that were important to you, and hopefully what will continue to be important to you as you go on to college. So all of that matters to the college as they're looking at all these thousands of applications that they got. They want to see who stands out. And your resume is one way to do that. And it helps you remember all the things that you've done, because often students, I'm reminding them, don't you remember when you were a freshman, you did this? They're like, oh yeah, because you do so much and you lose track. So if you put it all on one place, it's very helpful. And then should you have an interview down the road with a college, you bring your resume with you. And if they ask about it, you'll have it available, and then they can ask you questions based on what you indicated on that resume, and you can expound upon what it is that you wrote, that you bullet point on your resume. So it's very useful, and I'm going to be asking you to do that for the interview with me as well, just to get you moving on it, and you'll add to it as time goes on, and I'm going to ask for it again in senior year to assist me with the letter writing. All right. So during the springtime, it's a good time to start registering and looking at these virtual fairs and open houses. If you are lucky enough to be able to visit, please do so. There's nothing better than standing on a campus and imagining yourself being there. So if that's a possibility, and sometimes what students have done in the past when it was, it's more and more possible now to go to campuses. But if you look for several schools, maybe in the vicinity of, say you're going to Boston or Philly to look at schools, there's many schools to organize your visits around so that you take full advantage of whatever road trip you're going to do with your parents. And honestly, that was, for me as a parent, one of the best times that I had with my own children is, going and visiting and having that experience. So if you're able to do that, that would be wonderful. As I said earlier, for anything that's virtual or even in person, the colleges are asking you to register. Some are saying they'll entertain if you walk on the campus. If they have room, they'll fit you in. But it's best practice that you do it ahead of time so that they know who to expect. And, there are still protocols in place to keep everyone safe at this time. So springtime is definitely the time to do that. And then the biggie is the asking of the teacher recommendations. So we suggest that you ask 2 teachers, one from the humanities and one from the STEM, just to give kind of a well-rounded example of who you are. So depending on the school, and if it's a special program, they may require more than 2. And again, you're going to find that out as you do your research, whether or not that's true. So teachers in our school are very generous about writing letters. However, it's important that you respect their time and their, they are teaching. So when they say yes to a letter, some of them will have a limit. Say they're only going to write 20 letters or 30 letters or however many letters they're willing and able to write. So if they say no, just try to be gracious and say, okay, well, thank you, and ask somebody else. And just be mindful that there's a lot of you asking usually the same group of teachers, because generally it's going to be your junior teachers that you ask. So small amount of teachers getting asked by many, many students. So do it early, not too early. We suggest May. And sometimes I even suggest a little bit earlier than that, just so that in case they fill up, if you ask them, sometime in April, that's not a bad idea either. But minimum of 2. And okay. Oh, and email addresses. So anybody who has a holdover email from intermediate school, like QD 628, that's not acceptable. You have to come up with, a professional email address, even if it's just, your name at Gmail or whatever you decide, but something that is professional and something that you're going to use as for your colleges only. So you'll know that when colleges are contacting you, that's where they're contacting you. You don't want to have multiple email addresses out there, and now you can't remember who has what. So come up with something that's, easy for you to remember, that is professional, and that is going to be strictly for college. All right. And we'll move to I think it's the last slide now. So I hope that you no longer feel like it's overwhelming, daunting, and all those negatives, and think of it more as exciting, amazing, memorable, motivating, and pivotal. This is the best time of your life. And I know people say that, and it sounds, trite, but it's very true. You are getting ready to embark on a really amazing adventure. It's where you're going to start this adventure. So some students know that that's what they want to do, and they're starting and finishing where they are. Other students start one place and end up somewhere else. Whether it's a different major or a different school or whatever it is, but everybody has to start somewhere. So that's what this is all about, is where are you starting? And what do you hope to get out of this experience, So it's very important that you guys communicate. You have to talk to your parents. They have to be involved in this. It's not an independent project. You have to take ownership of it, but ask for support. as necessary to navigate some of these things, especially like the visits and the whole financial piece. It's definitely something that has to involve everybody. So, but it is wonderful and exciting. And I love to hear from my alum about where they are and what they're doing now, and just the exciting, wonderful things that they are doing in their lives. And that will be for you as well. It really is an exciting time. So that's it for me.
Miss Devine, we actually do have some questions, so I'm going to put them on the screen, okay, and read them out loud. And there's not many, but let's begin. So, Peggy asks, since there's no benefit to universal application, and those colleges that accept the universal app also accept the common app, what is the rationale for using the universal application?
I have no answer for that. I think that it might have started out as something that the Ivies wanted to do to kind of be a little exclusive, but it just honestly kind of adds to the confusion of what's going on. And I don't think anyone from our school has ever used the universal application, and they certainly apply to Ivies. So I think as long as it's on the Common App, there isn't a benefit to it.
Okay. Miss Yoon Smith asks, who do you consider a good candidate for the early decision application?
Okay. So the way that you would determine whether you're a good candidate is that you would look at your stats. So your SAT scores, your GPA, the rigor of the course load that you've taken over the course of your time in Staten Island Tech, compare it to the school that you're considering. And if it aligns, then you're a good candidate.
Okay. Thank you. Tina asks, does the CSS profile need to be resubmitted every year like the FAFSA?
I really don't know. I will absolutely get back to you on that. I'm sorry, I don't have that information.
So I was told that taking an SAT 3 to 4 times is very much acceptable, but some people say that only 2 times is best. What is your opinion on this?
So as I said earlier, the more that you take it, it starts to look as if you're trying to get a better score, which of course, that's why anybody's taken it more than once. If you got a great score the first time, then, well, I've had students who got 1540s and say, I want to get a 1600. So it's very personal. But what happens when you start taking it more than 3 times is now you have so many scores that the college can't even do like the power score where they would take the highest 3 from the 3, because now you have 4. So it leaves you open to the possibility that they may decide to either discount something and maybe the wrong something, or come up with an average, which could end up giving you a lower score. So there's so many things that the students should be paying attention to aside from the SAT that, it's really a drain on their brains and their resources to keep taking that kind of a grueling standardized test. So I say 2 times is perfect, 3 if you're really unhappy, and after that, just let it go. My opinion.
Okay. I just want to add that, yes, like the FAFSA, the CSS profile does need to be completed every year.
Okay, thank you for that.
Because it's an ongoing scholarship. Okay. Do we have any more questions? No, Ms. Devine. I believe that is it for the questions for tonight. As always, we will email all juniors and their parents/guardians a copy of the link so that they can easily access this presentation. I do want to add 2 points. One being that Ms. Devine referenced the letter of recommendation process. So in the spring, around April, around April is when I definitely send the letter of recommendation process to all the students and their parents so they could understand how we conduct the letter of recommendation. Ms. Devine is correct in the fact that it definitely begins with a student approaching a teacher and asking them if they would be willing to write the letter of recommendation. Once you do get a yes, a confirmed yes, there's a process that we go through to package you correctly. When I say package, I mean the way it works with letters of recommendation, just not to get into so much detail, because Ms. Devine will talk about this in your senior meeting, part one, is that the teachers write a letter that's very detailed and explicit to you as a student in their classroom. And the school also writes a letter of recommendation on your behalf, which is a more broad letter of you as a student within the high school for the last 4 years. So that whole process will be sent out for you so you could reference it as you go along the spring of your junior year. Another thing I want to mention also is that last year we created a Google Classroom. It was a virtual college office. And we did this because we wanted to make sure that there was no interruptions for the senior class during the application process. If we needed to close or whatever the case may be, or a student need to quarantine, we wanted to have a place where students would always be able to contact the college office, access digital documents, as well as submit digital documents. What we did was we continued that with this year's senior class, and it's worked wonderfully, where the senior class actually does submit their paperwork virtually through the college office classroom. And what all juniors will see now is that they have been automatically added to their college classroom, which is the class of 2023 college office. And the first real thing that will begin to happen in that Google Classroom for you is going to be one-on-one junior interviews with Miss Devine come the new year. So it's very important that you check that Google Classroom as much as you would check your other academic Google Classrooms, because a lot of announcements get posted on the stream as it relates to college. And there's a lot of resources and different benefits of being able to access that classroom on a daily basis. At this point in your high school career, you should be accessing it. I believe that's all I have to say at this point. So I want to wish everybody happy holidays. Ms. Devine, I'll let you close out the evening.
Okay. Well, thank you all for logging in, and I hope that you take advantage of this being recorded and looking through it again. And certainly come the spring, I'm still finishing up with seniors right now, but come the spring, I am all about the juniors. So you can come in between after we've had our meetings and ask any further questions. I already have had parents asking to set up meetings. So all that in the springtime, when I'm done with the seniors finally here, will be wonderful. So thank you again, and enjoy your winter break as it's coming up before you know it. And I look forward to helping you with this whole process. Take care.